Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creative Souls of Clare podcast. You're all very welcome, and thanks to Creative Ireland for their support in getting the podcast out into the world. And we have a very special guest here now. We have Shona Blake joining us from, drum roll, Shona, can you tell us exactly where you are and what's around you in that wonderful...
We're in Milltown, Malbay, County Clare. We're up here very high. We're higher than the church steeple. So, yeah, live in a beautiful home, surrounded by the sea.
Well, it is. I was about to say it's a beautiful home. I can really get a sense of the place. And higher than the church steeple, you say that. There's a great metaphor in that somewhere.
It's normally very windy up here.
Yeah, I'm in a windy place, so I'm not too far away from you. I'm probably 20 minutes away, and we could probably see each other over the hills. But yeah, I know all about the wind.
Yeah.
And did you grow up with the wind? Are you from these windy parts, or where are you originally from?
I'm from Ennis, County Clare.
Okay, so you're
grew up on Carcalla Road. Perfect childhood. And my mom would have had a mobile home here in the White Strand since I was about 10. So a lot of summers in Milltown Malbay and the White Strand.
Yeah, so you sort of half grew up around that part as such.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big lover of the sea.
When you say perfect childhood, can you describe a bit about that for me?
Oh, we'd great neighbours, we'd loads of space, we had woods, and you know, we had a big bunch of us were the same age. And I guess from my age group, we look back, we had so much freedom. You came home for dinner. That was it, really, wasn't it? Just great freedom.
Yeah, I have to say I do share some of that memory in my own way, in that, yeah, you'd be out rambling and wandering around fields and fairy forts, and
you were never asked where you were just gone. Yeah,
exactly. It is a great I suppose you could say it's a great blessing or a privilege, but I definitely sense that it has changed for children these days, and particularly urban kids. You know, I know everywhere has its own pros and cons, but it is idyllic in some ways, isn't it? The Mark Twain type rambling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely. My mom and dad, my mom minded children at home, and my dad was an engineer, and I've an older brother, one younger sister, and then the extended family of neighbours and friends. We just lived in each other's houses, and as I said, up in the woods or fields, and yeah, it was just lovely.
So you're like, Ennis is a big enough town now, but I mean, when you were growing up, was it kind of straddling town and country? Like, were you on the edge of town there?
Yeah, I suppose we were on the outskirts for sure. It's off the Kilrush Road, but you know, Inch and Kilmaley were up the road, and we had Carcalla Hospital, so there was no houses in the woods then.
Yeah.
The woods were ours, pretty much.
Well, there should never be houses in the woods unless they're wooden houses or tree huts. You know?
Yeah, well, money talks, Rory. But yeah, when we were growing up, there was no houses there, and they just belonged to us, and we had, each tree had a name, and it was a function, and yeah, it was just great.
Oh, I love it. And when you say your mother minded children, did that mean that you had a lot of new brothers and sisters by default?
They were just part of the home. We never knew any different.
Yeah. I also I kind of partially grew up in not my own home, but we myself and my siblings ended up we were looked after by a woman called Mrs. McDonough, or Mrs. Mac, and yeah, she had her own family, and we were part of this big giant collective, and that also was idyllic in lots of ways as well, to be part of that.
Such a lovely way to rear children. Excuse me. Such a lovely way for children to grow up outside of their home, in a home environment, I think.
Yeah, because my younger sister now, she's really struggled over the last while to find childcare. She's self-employed and needed to get back to work. And obviously, during challenging times with COVID or whatever, but I was asking her, did that child-minding way has kind of disappeared or been forced to close in many ways, hasn't it? I think there's something around insurance and registration.
I'm a Montessori teacher. I went into the same business, and I don't particularly like the whole big creche environment.
Yeah,
That's just
yeah,
myself personally.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's, you know, I suppose there's a lot of government restrictions, and that really are a load of, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I look at, we could go down this. This is a rabbit hole,
Yeah,
maybe
we
for
could.
another podcast. But yeah, look at. I think sometimes regulation is a good thing, but then when it kills the actual beauty of a thing, that it can be problematic as well.
Yeah.
So let's go back into the creative space, and I'm really struck by the trees and the adventure and all of that. So, at what point did Shona start singing songs as a child, or
Yeah,
was that
I
later
suppose
on?
I always sang. We had a toilet in our house that wasn't in the bathroom. The toilet and the bathroom were separate,
Yeah.
and the sound in there was unreal. So Shona Blake sang a lot in that toilet.
Oh.
And I won a medal when I was 7 for singing. But then I was very, yeah, I was passionate about horses. That was my first love. So I think as a little girl, that's where I went. Yeah. And certainly that followed me all the way into adult life. And I have show jumped and owned beautiful horses, especially my beautiful mare Tia, who I lost in 2014, I think. Huge, 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 huge part of my life. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I suppose like music is more often than not in Ireland played indoors with the for weather reasons probably, but it sounds like you kind of still have a kind of indoor outdoor dual passion, if you like, with
Oh,
music
very
and
much,
animals.
very much. I adored music, especially live music. There was a brilliant live music scene in Ennis when I was growing up. I mean, brilliant,
Mm.
brilliant bands, a lot of blues, a lot of rock. And I absolutely loved it, but I just
Oh.
didn't have the I don't, when looking back, I just didn't feel able to get up there and do that, you know. Knew I could sing. I'm a huge dreamer, Rory. Uh, just a massive dreamer. I dream all of the time, but I think of the problems with that then is kind of getting around to doing things. I'm a slow burner. So when we first moved from Dublin to Milltown, everybody thought I was a musician. So we were booked for gigs all over the place. I learned 24 songs in 2 weeks, and off we went. And so I kept, the horses were a sideline. We had the music. We have a music school in Dublin. And yeah, we're a busy family. Paul is a busy guy. He's always up to something.
When you say we, are you mostly talking about Paul there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Paul
Absolutely.
is your husband?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned Dublin then. So, take me in a whirlwind journey from 7-year-old Shona singing, getting her medal, to horses, and then how did you end up in Dublin, and what was the trajectory there?
Yeah. So horses were a big part of my life. So I did a lot of that around County Clare. Then at 18, obviously, did my leaving cert and went to Dublin to college to do Montessori teaching, and had a ball. Loved Slattery's in Capel Street for all the cool blues, the old Slattery's in the day. And then met up with a load of trad heads. Met them here in Willie Clancy Week in Clancy's, and one of them was Paul McCabe. And the following year, myself and Paul got together and we set up Clontarf School of Music when we were 23. We got married at 25. Then we had our beautiful daughter Holly, and 3.5 years later had Fia. So we have 2 girls, Holly and Fia. And before Holly started school, and just before I became pregnant with Fia, we decided we'd try and move to County Clare because, well, we just thought it was a good move for us to get out of the city, and we loved Milltown Malbay, like, deeply. So we had bought a house very young. We sold the house then in the boom times, and that gave us the gift of this house.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about the School of Music, and what was that experience like? You know, sharing that with presumably all ages or mainly young people?
Yeah, no, it was mad. We hadn't a clue what we were doing. We were very young. And when we first opened up, we had the first term, we were charging £5 a class, which was really stupid. We weren't taking in term money. And we had no ceiling on the building, so it was really, really cold.
Sure, what would
Very
you want
long
a
hours.
ceiling for? Like, come
Yeah, I know.
on.
So it was a slow process. We
Yeah.
worked really, really hard, and yeah, here we are. It's 27 years old now.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So it's obviously still flourishing,
Yeah,
or
yeah, still going strong. It was still going strong. Yep. The year was challenging, but Zoom was wonderful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I suppose I don't want to go down the COVID rabbit hole, so to speak, but it is a reality, particularly for musicians then, and the absence of perhaps live music and connection. But yeah, I agree. Like Zoom, obviously, is wonderful. We're actually now talking over Zoom, which is amazing in its own right. Um, but can you speak to me about that experience of the connection around music and how keeping that alive and so on, particularly during the COVID time?
That's a very big question.
Yeah.
Well, the school was great. We just kept the Zoom going, and most people embraced that.
Mm.
So that show was kept on the road. And for me, with my own stuff, funnily enough, it made me very brave. I had time to stop and think. So I put out 3 videos and released 3 songs so far over COVID. I'm about to release a 4th. I don't know, would I've been solid enough to send all that work out into the world. So COVID,
Mm.
time really suited me, I have to say. I love being at home. I love being in this space. I love the quietness and not having to rush. And it's my writing. I probably have found my own voice in a way that I haven't before.
Mm.
Mhm.
You described that as you weren't as solid, and so is there something there about the stillness and finally gathering yourself to be solid enough to then come forward again?
Yeah, I think there's a huge sense of self, like and being grounded in a space for a while
Yeah.
is for me has been healthy. Obviously, I know that's not the experience of a lot of people, but yeah, for me it was lovely. If the government would pay me to stay home, I would happily do that.
Yeah, well, I suppose finance and income is never far away from any
Absolutely.
conversation in
Yeah.
many ways, particularly for music. And then a lot of live musicians, gigging musicians, lost their livelihood. So
Yeah.
it's a big one, isn't it? And do you feel that when things get fully, I know it's starting to get back in a small way, but do you sense that, or at least I'm probably beginning to articulate some of my own hope here, is that there could be like a resurgence or a renaissance or a flourishing of music? Or could it be that people are now a little bit more reticent and fearful? Or, have you any sense of how music is going to take its place again?
I think it's going to have a massive place in people's lives personally. Yeah. I think it's the one thing people really, really miss.
Yeah.
It's not really dinner, it's not really drink, it's not like, I think people really miss meeting each other, and I think a gig is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And live music is a huge part of that, and the sense of joy it gives you and fills you up with so much, doesn't it? It's
Yeah. Live music, you can't really get that from streaming Spotify all the hours of the day. Like, it doesn't give you the same feeling in a room.
no, no, it doesn't. No, no, live
Yeah.
music, there's something very precious and special about it. And I
Yeah.
think with all this outdoor dining, I think it's going to probably be a part of that experience.
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, Going back to when you said you were younger and you maybe didn't see yourself as someone that would be on stage or performing, ultimately, was that a confidence issue, or was that just an image thing, or is there anything around gender, or what's going on there that
Oh
you?
gosh, hugely confidence. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
didn't have the confidence. Yeah, I know it's mad, but I just didn't. I see the young women nowadays. Oh, I admire them so much. They're amazing. Yeah,
Well,
amazing.
look, I'd say that's a universal story that maybe will always be there. That everyone has to go through their moments, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And mine certainly was. I was rearing children. Paul was fulfilling a lot of dreams. I was I was busy. I was busy. And,
Yeah.
you know, when I did, like, I was a great drunk singer. I had 3 good songs. Paul's an amazing musician. Once he plays, I feel I can sing anything, but I just didn't have the balls to get up there and do it. And when I started doing it, then I loved it. I really loved it. And like, we used to do a very wide range of songs, and it was just me and Paul to begin with, and then a great drummer called Alan Clancy came on with us, and we were a rock band for a while. Like, I was living the dream. It was brilliant. But doing, pub work, I think certainly moving forward for me, I don't know, will I do that work anymore? But financially we need to do it and everything. So I think now I would love to be singing to a listening audience,
Yeah.
as opposed to that wild wedding crowds or whatever. There's a lot of work in it, and you have to really
Yeah.
mind your teeth.
Yeah. I suppose each have their own merit, the raucous
Oh,
years, and then,
yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And it was a brilliant learning ground. It was brilliant. I learned so much about voice projection, what works for an audience, and you find your own voice in the middle of all that mayhem.
well, you have to, don't you?
Yeah, you do. You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of so many people say busking was the apprenticeship of, you learn so much on the street.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And certainly gigging to a crowd like that, you really do learn so much about. Yeah, yeah, it's your
And
learning
then
ground.
when you say, the listening crowd, really, I'm struck by, Christy Moore refers to, let's say, the fans as listeners, like the tweets are dear listeners. And he's very clear and intentional about wanting people to listen and cultivating that culture again. And I suppose there was an era where the folk club would have held a space for listening to music, properly listening without someone banging a glass beside you.
Yeah.
And he's thankfully trying to bring that back. And the likes of Pat Ryan and Owen O'Neill with Anna Music is bringing that as well. But it does seem like there's still a bit of work to do around creating spaces for properly listening to music, or maybe they do exist, but I personally feel maybe we need more.
Yeah, I think it's slow for sure, probably because a lot of live music was in bars, and like, I drink, so I'm not saying that, but people
Yeah,
get loud. It's
yeah,
lovely to go into a gallery or a cafe and just sing, and people just listen. It's just really a
yeah,
treat. For
yeah.
me, it's a treat. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I take an odd drink and I enjoy bars, but at the same time, I feel like we sometimes feel that they are the only place for everything, and they don't have to be.
Oh,
There's,
and I see, that's where I think there's a big change coming. Do you not?
oh, completely. Well, hopefully, but we still need bricks and mortar. We still
Yeah,
need, or rather, 4 walls
yeah.
and a ceiling as well to kind of
Well,
have.
here you have Pat Ryan and Owen O'Neill. Every one of their gigs has been so beautiful,
Yeah, yeah,
so beautiful, and a real work of love and passion. It's really inspiring. The Doolin Hotel, the same. The barn there is,
yeah, for
that makes
sure.
me really wow. So, Pat, whenever you want, I'm ready for a gig.
Nice one, Shona. Actually, that kind of leads me into a question here. Sometimes artists, in my experience, struggle with what is deemed to be called and sometimes negatively seen as self-promotion. But my view on it is that if you're doing the work, then why not tell people about it? Or if no one else is going to tell them, put your hand up and say, I'm ready, or I want to get on the stage. Like, don't shy away. But sometimes there's a culture of, like, it's not healthy to put your hand up. Who do you think you are? But I actually like the way you're saying, no, I'm actually ready for a gig here. Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Until the night before, and I'll die.
Yeah.
No, no. Yeah, I think, now that I talk to so many other musicians, including your beautiful wife, the self-promotion is so hard.
It
It,
is, yeah. Yeah.
it's exhausting. Social media is exhausting. So I I have streamed that in my life. So I put up what I need to put up, and I really like to follow who I like to follow. And after that, I try to just put it away, because a lot of it isn't real, is it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it might be real, but a lot of it's real crap. And
Well, no, I don't mean that. I mean, I think a lot of people are very, very good at it, and that's really good for them. But
yeah,
I've had this argument with myself for the last few years, and for me now, I just have to enjoy doing my work, enjoy recording, and putting out my work, and do what I'm comfortable doing. And after that, I
yeah.
find it. I can just park it then.
Well, I suspect that that's essential to maintain a creative practice because, I mean, we've talked about it a lot in our household. And, uh, I think one formula we came up with, or Susan came up with, was that perhaps, 20% of the content we're seeing and viewing on social media is interesting or engaging or inspiring, but maybe 80% is not. But if that was a plate of food, I'm stealing her analogy here. If that was a plate of food, you wouldn't go near it, 20, the ratio needs to be assessed. But also then, if you're wanting to be writing songs and singing songs, then spending your time on that train isn't going to necessarily help, is it?
No, I have to say I've done a lot of work with Sarah Faust and Alex Skibniatska this year, and that female creative energy, working with different artists like that, and we talk about it an awful lot, the three of us. But I think what happens when you engage in a lot of what other people are doing is you start to lose your own voice, and your soul gets a little bit tainted. And it's very important to keep that, or otherwise we're all going to be saying the same thing, aren't we, really? And where's the fun in that?
I think you're 100% there. So I think you use the words, your soul gets a little bit tainted. There could be a
Yeah,
great lyric in that, but
yeah,
it's like essentially what we're trying to do is bring forward our own unique imprint of a soul through song or whatever
yeah.
medium. And if that sounds like something else someone else heard the day before, it's not fully you.
It's not, and it's very easy for that to creep in.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I think as I get older, my ego gets smaller, thank goodness. Ego
yeah.
is such a difficult little person to deal with. And you don't mean to, you don't think you're an egotistical person. But I think once you start to realize that you have your own unique voice, that's all that's important. And the rest will look after itself, won't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think then part of that is the perhaps the like conditioning and culture around needing or wanting to be liked, and that goes back in many ways to the classroom and wanting to be the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
You probably see that in Montessori or in the School of Music or anywhere.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't remember. I mean, my own children growing up were terrible. Whatever everybody else wore, they had to wear. I don't ever remember being like that. And I don't remember anybody in school being like that. And
Yeah.
I remember, this is
Are they
really
are
going
they going
off.
to take are they going to take you up on that now?
No, I don't. I think the two girls would, if they were here, they'd probably agree with that. And
Yeah.
they were all like sheep. But now they're not. Now they very much have their own style. And
Yeah.
we didn't have money. Like everything now is, they don't wear the same thing out twice. It's beyond me. It's like, we got one good thing and we wore it every night we went out. We loved it so much. It's different. It's just different cultures. And I suppose each generation not gives out about the new one, but it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, for
Each
sure.
generation figures it
Well,
out.
it's going back thousands of years where the
It
elders
is.
will always
Yeah.
think the young ones have lost the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is music alive as a family experience now? Their daughters play and
Sophia is studying dance in England, so music is a huge part of her
mm,
life. She's a great singer, really good actress. And Holly is a very good musician, but she kind of chose not to play. I think it can be kind of intimidating when your parents are musicians as well,
yeah,
It's a bit like the plumber in the house. The plumbing never
yeah,
gets
yeah,
done.
yeah.
But Holly plays flute and she played fiddle, and she is her leaving cert, a week before her leaving cert, she said to her dad, will you play for me for my practical? And he was like, Holly, it's a week away. We're like, you can't do this. And she said, no, I can. We were all bawling, crying. Her voice was extraordinary. So, you know, as a parent, you get to a certain stage and you think, gosh, they have all those things and they'll find their way into using them whichever way they will use now, you know.
And how old is Holly now?
Holly will be 25 at Christmas.
Yeah.
She can't believe it, and I certainly can't.
Well,
He's going to be 21.
She's loads of time as well to be you know, look at your neighbor down the road who was on this podcast, Anne Ryn, who sang all her life but really didn't jump into it then till her 60s fully.
Yeah, I was 33 before I did my first gig.
That's amazing. Yeah, and then my wife there, Susan, just album coming out in her late 30s. So it's time is, what is time anyway, you know?
Yeah, and I think women aren't, we're not prepared to sit at home anymore and say, well, that's fine. I remember having a conversation with Ruth Smith at Doolin Folk Festival, and just how wonderful it felt for me that I was coming out the other side of rearing children, and I felt the freedom to be able to do things now. And I just didn't have that before, you know. I didn't personally, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think Anne Rins and the Shona Blakes and the Susan Quirks, you know, when your time comes, and that's it, you just go for it.
Yeah, I think that needs to be acknowledged too. The as you did, like the, you know, the dedication that so many women give to their families and their children, and I don't want to say like at your own expense, but because it shouldn't be seen as a negative as such, but there is something not happening as well.
Well, that's a huge part of our lives for many years, and I think, you know, this new album that I'm about to release is it's a love story to my mother and my daughters. There's no question about it. You know, I lost my mom in 2017. I was devastated, completely devastated, didn't see it coming. And I think I was 2 years in just complete numb land. And this has been just, creativity it's great therapy. It helps you deal with it so much. And music and song is just fabulous. Writing is fabulous. It's I feel really deeply connected to creativity and creative people right now. I started quilting, which I love. Just there's something in creativity that is so spiritual and so, you know, really makes you connect. I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm very passionate about it. I feel very, very, very fortunate to have the space and the time that I've been allowed to have since my mom died, certainly, to just be able to create. Because it takes time, you know. As
you said, like you find it therapeutic, and I suppose there was an element there of channeling or healing grief through the music. So the album is therapeutic in that way.
Yeah.
And was that the same for your first album, Shona? And how did that come about? And what was that play there?
Yeah, how did that come about? I've been thinking about this when you asked me to come on, and I've been trying to think about how that first album did come about. My mom got very ill, and I had to close down the creche because it was from her house. And that was a very hard thing to do. It was very traumatic. And I went working for one of the parents, Emer and John, and they had this house that was so full of routine and love. I loved the job, and it gave me I don't know, it just grounded me at that time. And I started writing and playing guitar. And so when the lads would go for their nap, let's say, and before I'd collect the older ones from school, I would write and play guitar. And the more I was doing it, Paul was finding songs everywhere that I'd snippets of everything I'd been writing unconsciously for years, obviously, getting myself through this time or that time, or even no time, just hundreds of pieces of paper. It was mad. So we put everything down, and had never done anything like that before. I did it quickly. I was so excited about it. and released it out into the world. And I'm very proud of the album, but it doesn't make much sense. It's a bit of everything in it, I feel. And it was received very well. But then Paul kind of decided that this is probably a huge part of my journey where I am now. He just didn't want to play. He didn't want to go out playing anymore. And he certainly didn't want to play for free, which is what I would need to do to promote the album. As you know, you do a lot of free stuff. And so initially I was devastated. And then I was like, what am I going to do? And met Anne Ryn, Clare Watts. We had 3 women sing, and the girls refused to allow me on stage unless I played the guitar for myself, which was hugely challenging. But it was brilliant for me, because as an artist, it made me move up a bit and made me more independent as a woman and as a performer. I'll never be a great guitarist. I've made friends with that now, but you know, it's challenging. But it's brought a lot to this new work that I'm doing. And I still drag Paul he comes into the studio and plays for me, but you know, and hopefully he'll come back and want to play. But for him, maybe just got burnt out with the whole scene, or I don't really know.
Oh yeah, I hear that. I hear that a lot, particularly you know, I'm sure it's not personal to you, but the playing for free thing, that eats at people also. At some point, they're constantly being asked to do this. You wouldn't mind doing this, that, and the other, and you don't ask plumbers or electricians to do that either. Yeah.
No. But yeah, I think there's probably much deeper motives in it as well. But funnily enough, if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have found my own voice, because you know, when you play you're married and you live together as a couple, and you know, I would probably be more of the compromiser. I don't think Paul would mind me saying that. So you're constantly, you know, compromising. So therefore, you're not finding your true voice. It's like painting a picture with somebody else. It's not going to be 100% your picture until it's only you painting it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So when you had to kind of up your game, so to speak, around the guitar, what was involved in that? Did you have to kind of take classes or go study it or practice way more?
I hardly go take classes when my husband is a classical guitar player, jazz guitar player.
You can pay him to like take classes.
No, I sit in with the kids, which is terrible, because they're brilliant. They just fly through everything. And then I work away a lot on my own. Like, it has been very challenging. I'm not going to lie. It isn't. I am a singer. I get lost in a song. You know, I say that to people all the time. I'm a performer. I'm not an entertainer. And I don't know, do you understand that? But, you know, an entertainer is great with crowds. They'll sing to the crowds or whatever. I think I'm much more of a performer. So when I have to play as well, it's very hard to keep the two going. But it's challenging, but you know, I have a lot of support, and people are always, you know, Clare and Anne have always been so great to push me in that direction. And you know, even if I'm making absolute bags of it, they were like, "Oh, we don't know what you're talking about. That was lovely. It was lovely." And you know, all that positive reinforcement. It doesn't matter what age you are. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's often the way that somebody makes what they think is a mistake, but most of us mortals will never hear it or notice it.
Yeah. No, I'm a brutal guitar player, but you know, we'll get better every time.
Yeah.
Paul is such a good guitar player. Like, he's just so brilliant. But that's what makes the studio experience amazing this time, because everything that you're hearing is live.
Yeah.
And he, you know, often he wouldn't even really know where it's going to. The last song we put out, I Wake Early to the Song You Sing, I had this idea for this song, and it was very personal and very raw, but I didn't know how we were going to finish it. So I just said, look, let's just give it a go. And what you hear is there's one big mistake in it. We couldn't fix it because it was just too emotional. And I absolutely think it's perfect. You know, you're not meant to speak about your own work that way, but it's so raw, and Paul's guitar playing is just so exquisite. Like, anyway, there you are.
Well, there's something there also about the mistake, and I also heard it said around a lot of production these days is so perfect that it loses some of its raw essence of being a real thing almost, that it's
Yeah.
that the mistake reminds us that it's real and alive. And
But in fairness, I think some people love that sound. I don't. I
mm,
love live music. I love an album that can just take me deep, and I just want to listen to it again and again and again. You
yeah.
know, and I suppose lyrics and melody. I just love the rawness of a
Mm.
really good raw sound. That's just what I like, you know.
What album would come to mind for you as something you might like or enjoy?
Oh my God, Kiki D. I just think she's amazing. Randy Crawford. I've listened to those girls, I don't know, millions and millions and squillions of times. I went to Kiki D. I was very pregnant, very, very pregnant with Holly in Whelan's, and she's got this guitar player called Carmelo, and it changed my life. I just knew that was me and Paul, that we could do that, and that was the sound I wanted. And she is some singer, some songwriter, and the songs she collects are extraordinary. And I love Randy Crawford. I love her sound, and I love the way she sings. And yeah, I love Joy Williams is another singer that's terrific. And then there's so many brilliant Irish singers coming out. I sang with Sarah Ryan the other day, and she nearly blew the top of my head off. Oh, the work that she's going to come out with this year is extraordinary, exquisite. What a girl. Yeah.
Class.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And there, you've obviously like do you have an intentional or a conscious emphasis on female singers, or is it what you're drawn to? Or do you feel like that sense of camaraderie and solidarity?
Anne Ryn says to me that when my mum Eileen died, that my inner feminism was born. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm very drawn to female energy at the moment. I reached out to Clare Sands. She's done some work on this album. Sarah Faust has been the video that Alex did with Sarah in it. I think is just so beautiful. That was an amazing experience. And sorry, I have a fly here. Yeah, so I think I am, Rory. I think you're 100% right. But then I meet lovely men like you and Pat Ryan and Owen O'Neill, who you really don't differentiate between male and females. I don't think you just rock on up and you know, invite us into the space, like, which is lovely.
Hmm. So, Shona, like, what do you have a dream? You said you're a dreamer earlier, and I'm wondering, like, what dreams you might be dreaming now, or can you share?
Yeah, you know, I feel really privileged in life to be married to the man I'm married to, and we've really, we really have achieved a lot of dreams that we've dreamed up that we wanted to do. We've owned a dive center here. We've, you know, the music school has been wonderful. Paul has done. He's like an open water paddy diver. He's a teacher as well. It was a dream he really wanted to do. We've traveled so much. We've two beautiful, healthy, gorgeous children who are happy. And so my new dreams, I don't know, I love making albums, but I wonder at the what's the word? Like how do we change things that we can make a few bob back from an album in order to make a new one?
Aha, there's the big one now. Yeah.
Here's the big one. And then are you being, you know, I don't have the horses anymore, so I suppose money that would have gone in there goes towards an album, so you can justify it that way. So I don't know what. I suppose I do have. I'd love to put out a book of poetry. That terrifies me as well. But you know, you get round to all these things. That would be my next dream, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that the fact that it terrifies you might suggest that that's another road to go down.
It's something you really want. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not always the case, but it's often the case that the things. I think Joseph Campbell has a quote: "The cave you fear to enter holds the greatest treasure."
Yeah.
And you know, life isn't always meant to be safe and comfortable, is it?
No, 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 no. And life isn't like that. And it's how to know those things. I'm always saying that to the girls, you know, and to know how to cope when it's not right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've certainly packed a lot in, Shona, that's for sure.
Oh,
Both of you, all of you, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so have you, Rory. It's great. It's great to be out living and doing it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you might as well live while you're alive.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd hate to be on my deathbed and go, oh, I wish I had. It's something I decided when I was younger. I suppose because it took me such a long time to get out there and do it. You just kind of think, gosh, yeah, that's the way to live.
Yeah, I think the fact that you decided that probably then did inform all that you did pack in, because it wasn't just something that happened, it was a choice, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's always a choice, isn't it?
Yeah, but maybe it's
I
maybe
know you're
there.
drawn towards things, and I know that, um, but some people want to do things and they just find it hard to get it out of them.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's where sometimes we need a wee kick in the arse from
Yeah,
ourselves or each other.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's and would you ever struggle with that in terms of having a sort of a lull or a difficult patch where just there's nothing flowing musically or creatively?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so undisciplined. I wish I would, it'd be nice to be a more disciplined human being, but I'm not. Um, yeah, I really struggled after that song I talked about there. The last one I put out, I could not write at all. And I was talking to a friend of mine one day and she said, why don't you write to the song and ask why you can't? Which was a really good idea. And it started everything flowing again.
Oh, lovely. Well, then it's good to have that friend there as well.
Yeah.
I think that just being part of some community is important as well, isn't it? Where
Oh,
people can nudge and support.
I 100% agree. And feeling safe in that community. And I think, then you start finding your creative tribe, which is a really powerful force if you are a creative person. Because you can sound things off on them, or you can ring them and tell them you're having a bad day. They just so get it. They really understand where you're coming from, because you know they're often there themselves. Or
Mm,
and
mm.
yeah, it's great to have that weighing scales, I suppose, of people who can, and to be there for them as well.
Yeah, yeah, big time. I think so much of the work can be needs to be singular, and perhaps you're isolated and need to be on your own journey. But then the flip side is that you don't get lost on your own as well.
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe that's just life in general, isn't it?
yeah. Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I found this journey. It's been kind of incredible, really, and just finding the people then that, uh, save you, I suppose, and you save them. It's, I think when you're a creative person, you need to be very brave at times, because even for you putting out your book, it's um, a lot of personal insights coming outside, and you're handing it to the world. And
Mm,
that's a very brave thing to do, and you're trying to put in out new work into the world that you hope kind of hasn't been done before, and
mm.
to be unique. And when you think back on the amazing painters like Frida Kahlo, how brave she was, um Leonardo da Vinci. It's Yeah, anyway, yeah, just Shona, be quiet.
Not at all, not at all. Yeah, I suppose you're kind of putting yourself out to be judged in a sense, because people are by definition going to go, I don't like that or I do like that. But at some point, that's not your concern, isn't that? It's such a
Absolutely.
tricky
But that
point.
journey is hard, just to get
Yeah.
to that point where you feel comfortable enough just to let it out
Oh,
and just
for
go.
sure. Yeah. 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 I often feel it's maybe not to take it so personally as well, because some people like Mexican food, some people hate Mexican food, some
Exactly.
people, spicy, not spicy.
Yeah.
And music is such a palette of color as well, whether it be jazz or folk or blues or,
Yeah.
yeah, everyone has their
100%
own.
agree with you. Yeah. And to get yourself into that space and be comfortable in it, and just get over yourself, as the fella says.
Get
Yeah.
over yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up, Shona. I think it's a good one, you know, because yeah, I think that captures a lot there. Is you almost have to get into yourself and then get over yourself at the same time.
I get exactly. You really do. Yeah. Um, I love that girl, Niamh Regan, you know, that girl
Yeah.
from Galway. I heard her doing, she's very, very, very funny. I heard her doing this brilliant interview, and he said to her, you know, was there music in your family? And she was like, no, not really. And he said, well, wow, you know, what drew you to being a songwriter? And she said, well, I think I was the only one in my family with notions. And I thought it
Yeah.
was absolutely brilliant.
It's no harm to have a few notions
Yeah, yeah,
as long as you keep it in tow or keep it in line.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, listen, thanks so much, Shona. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and looking forward to the next album. And I encourage people to check it out and check out your website and buy the music and attend the gigs.
Bandcamp, yeah, or website.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's Shona Blake. Remind me the website.
.com.
.com. Brilliant. And encourage everyone else to check out and share this podcast with Shona, help people find it and all the rest, and check out the archive of the Creative Souls of Clare podcast. And huge thanks to you, Shona, and lots of love and more power to you and the music.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Rory. It was
Thank
lovely.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.